Alex Harris, a young and cocky engineer, despised the older workers, thinking he was smarter than everyone else. He mocked Walter, an elderly bricklayer, not believing he could teach him anything. But when Alex made a serious mistake in the drawings and found himself on the verge of being fired, Walter was the one who helped him correct the situation. Stay tuned if you want to find out how this story ends, and don't forget to subscribe and give us a like so you don't miss out on more exciting stories. The noise of construction filled the morning air with the booming clang of hammers, the roar of engines, and the hum of workers. As the city grew, a new office tower rose in the heart of Boston. Hundreds of people worked here day after day, erecting structures, laying bricks, pouring concrete. Up on one of the building's frames stood a young engineer, Alex Harris, with his arms folded. He was new to the project, but had already distinguished himself in a less than pleasant way. The son of a wealthy businessman and a graduate of a prestigious university, he considered himself smarter than everyone else and treated the older workers with undisguised contempt. "Hey, Walter!" he called to an older mason sitting on a toolbox, looking at plans. "Are you sure you can finish this section today? Or should I get someone younger?" The workers standing nearby looked at each other but said nothing. They knew that Walter was one of the most experienced foremen on the site. He had worked there for more than 40 years and could lay bricks straighter with his eyes closed than anyone else. The old man looked up at Alex, showing neither anger nor resentment, but only slight disappointment. "I was working with bricks when you were a baby, son," he replied calmly. "So don't worry, I know what I'm doing." Yes, of course," Alex grimaced. "Just don't forget that if you don't meet the deadline, it will reflect on me. And I don't want to look like an idiot in front of my superiors." Walter chuckled, shaking his head. "It's not about timing, it's about quality. But I think you still have to understand that." Alex snorted and left without even looking at the rest of the workers. "The guy's really gotten cocky," muttered one of the workers. "Let him live a little, he'll understand everything himself," Walter replied and returned to his drawings. A few weeks later, Alex received a task that would be his first serious test. He had to develop a plan to strengthen the load-bearing structures on the upper floors of the building. Papers with drawings landed on his desk, complex diagrams, numbers, calculations. "Pfft, a piece of cake," he thought, running ideas through his head. But when he began to analyze the schematics, his confidence quickly began to crumble. The formulas didn't add up, the drawings seemed confusing, and his engineering knowledge seemed inadequate. By evening he was hunched over the table, crossing out old calculations and trying to find a solution. He knew that if he didn't figure it out, he would be exposed in front of his boss. And the worst thing would be if the workers realized that he was incompetent. That same day, the foreman, Mr. Davis, the man who was in charge of the construction site, approached him. "Alex," he frowned, "is there something not adding up for you?" No, everything is under control," the young engineer answered quickly, hiding the papers. But Davis was not stupid and immediately realized that something was wrong. "Look, man, you better get this sorted out fast. We have a meeting with the developer tomorrow morning. If you don't come up with a solution, we'll have to rethink your role in the project." Alex swallowed. This was what he had been afraid of. At night he tried to find a way out himself, but to no avail. Fatigue overwhelmed him, and he felt that he could not cope alone. The next morning, nervously rolling his pencil between his fingers, he looked around the construction site. His gaze fell on Walter, who was working confidently, as always, with the brickwork. Alex struggled internally with himself before finally mustering the courage to approach the old man. "Walter," he began uncertainly. The mason raised an eyebrow at his voice. "Well, I never, Mr. Engineer has condescended to us simple workers?" Alex coughed nervously. "Listen. I need help." Walter chuckled. "Oh? Now that's interesting. What's the problem?" "These drawings." Alex showed him the papers. "Something doesn't add up. I tried, but—" Walter wiped his hands on his apron and looked at the papers carefully. After a few seconds he nodded. "It's all simple," he said. You didn't take into account the actual load on the masonry when changing the angle of the structure. This is a classic mistake for theorists. Alex felt his cheeks flush with shame. So you can help? Of course. Walter nodded. But I wonder, aren't you too proud to ask an old man for advice? Alex looked down. I was wrong. I underestimated you. Walter chuckled. Not me. All of us. You thought that because you had a degree you knew more. But now you understand that experience is no less important than theory. Alex nodded. Yes. And I'm sorry. Walter smiled. Well, boy, since you've admitted your mistake, then let's sort out these drawings. They spent hours going over the drawings, Walter patiently explaining how to account for the peculiarities of the brickwork, how the weight was distributed, and where mistakes were commonly made. Alex listened, took notes, asked questions. By evening he finally realized where he had made a mistake. Walter helped him correct the calculations, and now everything looked logical and harmonious. That's better, said the mason, clapping Alex on the shoulder. Now you can go to the boss with a proper plan. Thank you, Walter, Alex said sincerely. Remember, the old man replied. Whenever you work with people, respect them. No matter their age or position. Experience is more important than a piece of paper with a university seal. Alex nodded. He finally understood. The next day, Alex walked into the management office with a confident posture. He presented the revised plan, and Davis and the developers were pleased. Good job, Alex, Davis said, nodding. It looks solid now. Alex, leaving the office, immediately headed towards Walter. Hey, Walter! The mason looked up from his work. Thank you? If it weren't for you, I would have been fired today. Walter chuckled. Come on, kid. But I hope you learned your lesson. Alex smiled. You bet. From that day on, he changed. He no longer bullied the workers, treated everyone with respect, and asked his elders for advice. The construction moved forward, and Alex finally felt like he was not just an engineer, but part of a real team.